privileged and honored today to have in our midst the Governor of Enugu State.
Excellency, here you have the priests who are at the grassroots. When things become tough, even in politics, we go back to them. We did that in 2023. You have the sisters who are working at different locations and different institutions at the grassroots. I believe this discussion today will help us to know more about what we tell our people. We now be their voice as we're supposed to be, to communicate. We have not come for any kind of political rally, but we have come to listen to governance, to ask questions to governance. So please, thank you for coming. Without flattering you so much, you've done so much. You've done so much. Now let me leave that aspect. You will listen to your people. When we must have heard from you, then probably learn, give our own reactions, and then return back.
First, I think I have to start this address by making an attempt to discharge a truckload of debt of gratitude that I owe. And so this gratitude is multifaceted. But let me start first by expressing my profound gratitude for the opportunity of this interface, the opportunity to be amongst you here this morning. The value and the significance of it can never be lost on me, and I do not take it for granted. And let me also, on a very lighter note, there was something that I said during our campaign when I went to Nkanu East to campaign. Typically, I would refer to other people when I go to their local government. I say, you are all stakeholders. But I recall when I got to Nkanu East, I said, you're beyond a stakeholder. You're also a shareholder. And that is the same thing I say to you, men and women in this hall. You are a shareholder in this government. Being here today is not just, for me, a mere political posturing. It is driven by a deep conviction that government must be accountable. And that accountability is essentially means that we need to have engagements like this to be able to paint the picture of what we're doing, where we're headed to, and to even get you to interrogate the validity of some of our programs, our projects, our policies, and maybe even learn from you. Because I'm not sure that what you have built or these rugged values you have deposited in me, I'm not sure they are infallible. So being human, we're also fallible, and we can't say we're perfect. So we're always open to learning. Recall on the 22nd of October 2022 at the Godfrey Okoye University, we unveiled a blueprint for Enugu State. A blueprint that was predicated or based on three critical factors. One was to grow the economy of Enugu State from $4.4 billion to $30 billion in 8 years. The second was to ensure that Enugu is number one when it comes to a destination for business, for living, and for tourism. We also said that we're going to reduce our poverty headcount rate to 0. So we're going to achieve a 0% rate in our poverty headcount index. Now, looking at those 3 items, they are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are connected. So, and as I'm told that I have 40 minutes, so I have the liberty of time. So, as I unveil some of the things we have done, you will be able to see the connections of these 3 critical factors. Let me start by painting a picture of what we are doing in the education sector and where we are headed. We are, of course, not assuming that when we made those when we set those humongous goals, we are not aware of where things stood in our state. And it wasn't as if we didn't have the data of where things stood. In fact, you can see that if you look at the trend of our growth, let's just take the first item, growing from $4.4 billion to $30 billion. If we did the calculus, you notice that we're talking about a 27% compounded annual growth rate. Now this is coming from where your growth rate has been at 2% over the years. Now growing from that 2% to 27% CAGR means that you have to be able to, of course, you're trying to disrupt the trend because it does not conform to the growth trend that you're inheriting. And then if you also look at where we were at our poverty headcount index, we're actually at 58%. That was our poverty headcount rate. And we committed to moving from that 58% to 0. Now, of course, if you look at our HDI, we also are aware of where we were at our Human Development Index. We're not unmindful of those challenges. So you can see that the scale of ambitious goals that we have set has somehow stirred this sense of anticipation in our people, and which is why it feels like every day we are rendering our scorecard. And what is more, that we're now approaching the midterm of our tenure. So there couldn't really be a better time to render our scorecard than now. So again, I thank His Lordship for creating this platform. Now, I was talking about trying to give a picture of the things we have done or the things we're doing in some of the sectors. If you look at the manifesto we unveiled, our education plan was pronounced as cutoff point. It's a cutoff point initiative because we felt that we needed to do things differently, not necessarily better, because if we were thinking about doing things better, then our mindset will be how to grow things in those sectors incrementally or maybe marginally So if our kids did not have tables or chairs to sit, we think about how to procure those tables and chairs. If they didn't have books, we provide books. No, that wasn't the plan. The plan was a transformational system in our education sector. And we then, that is the cutoff point initiative is what today is translated to the Smart Green School Initiative, which is our intervention in our basic education sector. This is where we're doing 260 smart green schools across the 260 political wards in Enugu State. Now you'll be wondering why smart, why green schools? It is deemed smart because, frankly, it has each location of this smart school features an internet and information and communication technology that enables digital learning and also exposes our children with the evolving 21st century skills. And why do we define it as green? Again, each smart school is powered by a 65 kVA renewable energy. So we have a solar PV of 65 kVA in every smart school. And so that's why we refer to it simply. And of course, each smart school also would have what we refer to as smart farm. So an integrated farm that has greenhouses where we can also obviously have a system where we can grow things round the year. And that's why we refer to it as smart green schools. But it is not so much about the bricks and the mortar. It's not so much about the infrastructure that we're so excited about. It is about the intervention in the education, because we were dealing, frankly, with steep challenges in the education sector, where we have 3/4 of our children that are literacy and numeracy, that lack literacy and numeracy proficiency, where we have major skill gaps. You're talking about digital, life, and industrial relevant skills. And we're also dealing with a situation where we do not have, the infrastructure. We have deficiency in our infrastructure and learning resources. So these were the challenges we were confronted with. And we felt that rather than do a marginal growth approach, we needed to leapfrog. Because we understand the value and the importance of education, we view education as the cornerstone of any society's progress. So if we're talking about becoming wealthy, eliminating poverty, and making sure that we create wealth in our society, the foundation for that, the foundation for any human capital development is education, sound education. We know it's also the bedrock upon which any society's future stands on. Then we also ensure that the method of delivering that skill is one that gets our children to be involved, to be, to learn by practicing those things. So we have introduced what is known as experiential learning. And that model is largely the poster boy of education in this country today, where we also have attracted some national interest coming to borrow a leaf from Enugu, borrow a leaf from what is going on in Enugu here. And the idea is that the smart schools, or indeed our education system should not be one that focuses on getting our children to memorize or just repeat things, but getting them to see themselves as problem solvers, to see their classroom as a creativity hub, to provide solutions to compelling social problems. So if you look at the sort of curriculum we have developed, they are ones that have different centers where the kids can essentially practice what they are being taught. So each smart school, for example, would have a robotics center, an artificial intelligence center, a mechatronics center. You also have the ICT lab. And of course, because we have a law that makes it mandatory that from the upper basics, so we've divided our school system to 3 basic levels. So we have the lower basic, which is from elementary 1 to 3. By the way, we have not excluded the early child learning. The early child learning starts from nursery 1 to 3. Then we have the lower basic, which is from elementary 1 to 3, the middle basic, which is 4 to 6, and then of course the upper basic, which is from 7 to 9. And if you're in the upper basic education, you are mandated to at least learn 1 practical skills. So you would also see in each smart school where we refer to as practical skill centers, where we teach our kids the different practical skills. We introduce them to it. Of course, our hope is that from the basic education, we're also now preparing them for those who are academically inclined. They can go on to what we're doing in the secondary education space as well, which is schools that we refer to as smart secondary schools. The idea is to have the smart secondary schools 17. So we're going to have 1 smart secondary school in each local government. And the smart secondary school would be able to accommodate at least 2,250 students. So all the students that are leaving the basic school in each local government would be easily absorbed by the smart secondary school. We also have the TVET colleges, the technical, vocational education training, which essentially, again, for those who want to now enhance their practical skills, they go through that channel. And then, of course, we're also having a massive reform going on in our tertiary education space, where we are obviously right now beyond the experiential learning that we're also taking to that tertiary level. We're also trying to upgrade some of our institutions. For example, the College of Education Technical is being upgraded to Enugu State University of Education and Technology. We also have the Iwolo, where we have the Polytechnic. That is also again being upgraded to Enugu State University of Agriculture and Technology. And of course, we have the SUMAS, we have ESUT, IMT, all those tertiary institutions we are also intervening, because it all has to be holistic, this transformation. And for us, this is a 10-year plan. If you notice what we're doing in that space, currently we're spending 33.3% of our budget. So 1/3 of our budget is being dedicated to the education sector. And I'm aware that some here would be wondering, is this sustainable? How are you able to sustain that level of spending over a very long period of time? Now, you may not find 33% to budget, your total budget, 33% of your total budget dedicated to education sustainable. But we're not going to continue to spend 33% after a few years, because after we're able to deal with the infrastructural deficiencies and the learning resources that we're going to provide. Then we will now, of course, focus on the operating cost, which won't require us to dedicate 33%. But for now, because of those challenges we have in our infrastructural deficiency, we must do that. And this is an area where we hope to collaborate a lot with the church, because we also understand the value and the importance. Enugu, being a remarkable city for education, owes that reputation to the church. The church has made very remarkable impact in the education sector. And part of what we emphasize in this reform going on in our education sector is our teacher training program. We believe that the output that we get in terms of the kits we produce from this different school system would only be effective if we're able to train our teachers well and continuously training them. I've had to, of course, dwell somewhat in this education sector, but I hope that during the Q&A, we're still going to be able to do some further deep dive. Again, I would like to paint some picture of what we're doing in the healthcare space, because we see social services as a very key indicator if we have to improve on our HDI, if we have to essentially deal with also poverty in the long run. We must be able to address the challenges inherent in our social services sector. So if you look at the healthcare sector, we take the primary healthcare sector, for example. We had indicators that we totally could not accept. We had to deal with a maternal mortality rate of about 736 deaths per 100,000 live births. That was for us unacceptable. So, but within the last 2 years, we've been able to crash that rate from 736 to about 170. So what that means is for every 1,000 live birth, for every 1,000 live birth, we're dealing with about 1.7 maternal death. Now we were coming from 7.3 or 7.4 deaths. So that figure has been crashed, but we're not there yet, because the national target, for example, is 0.8. That means 80 deaths per every 100,000 live births. That's with respect to the maternal mortality. The under 5 mortality rates too was also unacceptable. Today in Enugu, we've actually exceeded the national target of 5 deaths per every 1,000 live births. So today we're doing in Enugu 4 deaths, and we're not there. We're not there yet, and that's why we're investing hugely, because if we're able to intervene in our primary healthcare space. So what we're currently doing, for context, is that we're building about 3,380 beds in our primary healthcare space, which means we're doing 13 beds per primary healthcare center, per type 2 primary healthcare center. And within the next 8 weeks, all these PHCs will be ready and fully functional. And we're not just building the brick and the mortar. We're also interested in making sure that they are well staffed. So about a year ago, I approved the recruitment of about 2,500 healthcare personnel, because one of the first things we did was a gap analysis to understand the personnel gaps we have across our PHCs. And we realized that we had over about 2,500 healthcare personnel gaps. And we have been recruiting since that 1 year ago. We've been recruiting across our community health extension workers, our midwives, nurses, and even doctors. And the idea is to make sure that if you have a pregnant woman who is in labor by 2 a.m. and she walks into any of this PHC in the rural area, they should be able to be attended to. Because one of the major causes of the maternal mortality we have are those are mothers, those are pregnant women who are attended to by non-professionals, non-healthcare professionals during child delivery. And that's where we tend to have these mortalities. So we want to end that, and we want to make sure that you have access to quality medical care 24/7 round the clock. Several interventions we have done across the social services, but I'm just going to, cut through them so that I don't eat beyond my 40 minutes. If you look at the security situation, the situation we had to deal with when we took over office was a situation where we had non-state actors dictating to us the days of the week we must go to work and the days of the week we must sit at home. We had situations where our security agencies were murdered recklessly in a broad daylight. And we also have to contend, with the farmers, herders, clashes that are going on in our rural communities. We obviously had to identify those challenges as the biggest elephant in the room when we came in. We recognized that if we were to attain the sort of growth we were projecting, we needed to address insecurity, because a lot of those growths were going to come from private sector. The private sector won't come if your state is not safe and secure. So we invested hugely in technology and also in several infrastructure, creating a department that is known as DRS, Distress Response Squad. And then, of course, building CCTV across the state with a world-class command and control center. We do not think that we have been able to, we can tell you here that the challenges of insecurity has completely been eliminated. But what we have done today is that where we've put in place infrastructure to enable us nip crime in the bud. But there are, of course, instances where we still have breaches. But the interesting thing is that once that breach occurs, we have the capability to track, identify the criminals, and bring them to justice. Just this morning, I was, just as I was, waking up, I got a text from one of the fathers who shared a text with me of an event that took place on 2nd of May, where we had some of these bad boys they obviously kidnapped someone who was coming out from a shop and drove off with that person. Now, the same day that incident occurred, we were able to track this criminal. We were able to take out, of course, the things they do naturally is to try and open fire on the security agents. We were able to take one down, rescued the kidnapped victim, and of course, essentially have our eyes on the rest. But The important thing to note is that we have the capability to enable us track these criminals, capture them, and bring them to justice. We are going to continue to work hard to ensure that they don't hit our people before we go after them. And that's our objective, but we're working on it. But we do not take lightly the challenges or the issues of insecurity. It almost appears as if, that's an area we cannot compromise, because we know that's the primary purpose of governance. We must be able to provide security, and the well-being of our people, they must be paramount. Now, the other area which we thought was top on the priority list of our people was the water. During our campaign, we made a commitment that in 180 days, we're going to ensure that there is water in every home. And when we came in, the production level we had of water in the state, the supply we were getting at that time was 2 million liters of water daily. We realized that the total city, in order for that, if we're going to make sure that Enugu City, everybody gets water in their homes, we must produce minimum was 80 million liters. That was the requirement based on the survey and the study we did. Of course, we had a number of water schemes. We set forth, of course, our dawn, even before dawn, when we realized that some of the intervention has a very long lead time. We started, of course, even before we were sworn in, to execute some of those projects. The interesting thing is we were able to address the area of production. So in the water value chain, you have 3 streams. You have the production, you have the transmission, and then you have the distribution. And they are referred to as the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream. The upstream, which is the production, we're able to address the challenges we have there. We increased our capacity from producing 2 million liters of water daily. We're able to produce 120 million liters, which means that we have enough water and have also buffer to supply the entire city. But there are other challenges which only became known once we were able to solve that problem. The issue of distribution, making sure that water gets to the various homes. We realized that quite a number of those connections to the different homes had been built on, and some of the network had been completely diverted. Also realized that some of the pipes had asbestos, and that we cannot pump water through asbestos, so we got also to work with that. We are not there yet with respect to making sure that water is running in every home, but I can tell you, for us, we've already declared that sector as an emergency. So we are not resting, we're not sleeping, we're making sure that all that happens, that we get water to every home. And we're not going to rest until we've resolved that and we make sure that water gets to every home. We have also done something in the urban renewal. We're talking about making sure that we rehabilitate our slums. We referred to the slums as a sword finger, a sword tongue in our manicured finger. That was the way it was referred to in our manifesto. And we committed to make sure that we rehabilitate and ensure that we upgrade those slums. But there are, of course, some of these decisions that you must make with compassion. And the truth is that being in this office, there are nights that you're going to have sleepless nights when you contemplate about the weight of decision you have to make. You think about how those decisions would affect others and the consequences of those decisions. So sometimes you have to, some days you have to push the pause button, not necessarily because of indecision, but because of the weight of some of these decisions, and to make sure that you are compassionate. So part of our strategy in that area is to make sure we are ready with the locations where we are going to resettle those people who are staying in those urban slums. So once we're aggressively now building about 5,000 homes, which will be completed in few weeks, and where our hope is that we're able to move these slum dwellers to those new homes and provide them ownership of those homes too. So we're going to issue them C of O. They are going to have their title document once we're moving them to those new homes. And those homes are all going to be fully serviced. They will have water, they will have electricity, they will have smart schools for their kids, they will have a recreational environment, they would live, in dignity, and that's for us the whole idea. It is what informed everything we're doing across the different sectors. This idea of inclusivity, the idea of equality, making sure that the children of the have-nots and the children of the elites are able to be provided with equal opportunity to succeed and be given a fighting chance to excel in life. And that's what we're doing. And you notice that a lot of the programs I've talked about in our social services sector speak to 260. That's because they are grassroots based. We want to make sure that the weakest link among us are carried along, that we don't just grow our economy at the expense of our common humanity, that these people, and again, it's in our enlightened self-interest to do so. Because imagine if we continue to leave them behind, we would just be, it would be like a keg of gunpowder. It would just be only a matter of time. The sort of criminality we're dealing with today, the sort of tension and fragilities we are observing in our communities today will be a child play if we don't arrest these problems, making sure that we expose our young ones to the right skill that they need to be relevant in the workplace of tomorrow. We've also intervened across several other sectors. If you take, for example, the road infrastructure, today we have done and currently doing close to 300 roads in the city. And then across the different rural areas, we have largely done about 1,000 kilometers of roads already. So there is hardly any local government where we don't have a road intervention going on. And nothing is slowing us down in that area because we're ready. We are focusing so much of our budget in the education sector, but we're not leaving other sectors out. We're also aggressive in those sectors. And then if you look at the transportation, so what we're actually doing in our city is not just about making sure we have all our roads paved. We have also an intervention that is referred to transport management system. So we've just recently procured about 200 CNG buses. I know we've received the delivery of about 50. The other 50 will be ready by the end of the month. And then before the end of June, we're going to have 200 CNG buses. We also have a private investor who have invested in a CNG mother station in Enugu, Greenfield. and is going to roll out very soon about 30 daughter stations. So even when we operate this transportation system with CNG, we're not worried about where are we going to get refill of our CNG. So we had all that thought through, and this is what we're doing. And then of course, if you notice in your various areas, you notice that we're doing new bus shelters, because we're going to have a digital system where we're going to, which enables you largely to procure a ticket that you can use for 1 month. So when you use the city bus, it's not it's not bus sensitive. Once you have your ticket for a day, you can ride on any of the city bus, and you have the electronic digital payment system, the electronic identification system that identifies the validity of your ticket as you walk into the bus. And we are also intervening in our terminals. So you look at the different locations where we have built new terminals. They are also strategic, and it's statewide. So you have the Holy Ghost, for example, where we've done 2 terminals. We've done the interstate and the intrastate terminals. We also have the Nsukka terminal. We have the Gariki and the Abakpa terminals. And we have also the Udi terminal that we're going to soon start that construction. We have one in Ogo, we have one at Eko Binago. So there are new terminals that would also be coming up. The idea again is to have a sane city and to make sure that our people, live in honor and dignity. And we have, when we unveiled our manifesto, if you look at the tourism sector, we spoke about attracting 3 million visitors to Enugu. That wasn't just flights of fancy. It's not a pie in the sky. We recognize what it means to bring in 3 million visitors to Enugu daily. So we essentially started connecting the dots. So I'm sure you already know that we have the Enugu Air, which in about 10 days will become operational. We're going to begin to, it's not just about the Enugu Air coming up, but we're just about closing the deal. We're just waiting for the Federal Executive Council to sign off on the concessioning agreement of the international wing of the airport. And that will soon happen. In about 4 weeks, we should be done with that, because the negotiation with all the relevant agencies have been concluded. And once that happens, we already have investors that have lined up to upgrade the international wing, build a cargo terminal for export. And you will see why the cargo terminal is relevant when I talk about the agriculture sector. You see what we're doing in the agriculture sector to scale up. But still on transport. So the whole programs and projects we're executing in the transportation sector is largely to enable us achieve that number, 3 million visitors, seamlessly in Enugu. And which is why, again, you notice that we have intervened in the tourism sector in a very remarkable way. We're building a 5-star hotel, a 340-bed 5-star hotel, in discussion with Marriott to take over. So we're going to have branded hotels here in Enugu, and I'll tell you why that is important. If you have the international wing functional and you want to attract other foreign or international carriers, they won't come if you don't have branded hotels, because they want to put their crew where they feel that they will be safe. So it's extremely important that so rather than wait for the investors to come, what we have done as a matter of policy and strategy is to do what in marketing you call supply push. So there are 2 strategies you can use if you're doing your market assessment, either demand pull or supply push. we realized that using the strategy of supply push, we're able to intervene in a sector, which now makes it attractive for the investors to come in, and that's been our experience. Rather than wait, we just start developing, and then as we go on, we get all the inquiries and we get the interest excited, and they just take it and run with it. You notice that the Hotel Presidential, I think, if I'm not mistaken, would be open from next month. We're going to officially commission the Hotel Presidential by next month. So that again is increasing the keys that we have. Again, this is, you look at it, the terminals, the CNG buses. We also have a program which is which we're going to implement before the end of this month into next month. We're bringing in about 2,000 taxis, city taxis, and what that means is essentially making sure that we get our young people, take over the city taxis, and we provide them a backstop and allow them to do a higher purchase of those taxis, and be able to not just earn a living, but we provide decent transportation system in our city. The interesting thing is that we're only going to get 1,000 of those taxis as fully built. So the FBU will be 1,000. The other 1,000, the OEM has agreed to come here and set up. So they are going to build their assembly plant here. So we're going to get CKDs that will be assembled here, thereby creating jobs. Now we've used the same model in our agriculture sector, where we procured 100 fully built tractors, and our interest is to procure 1,000. The other 900 will be assembled here in Enugu. So we have an agreement which says that the OEM must come and build the assembly plants right here in Enugu, again creating jobs and also transferring knowledge, making sure that our young people have where they can learn and be able to handle these things on their own. In fact, the same strategy we used for the procurements we're doing in the smart school. We have the higher group coming here to set up their plant. Again, that plant is almost done. The all-in-one station and the Android tablets we're procuring for the smart schools. A lot of them, about 80% of them, will be built here in Enugu. Again, creating jobs for our young people, transferring knowledge. And so this has been a deliberate strategy. You recall that we talk about how we can not just create an enabling environment for investors to come. We also said we're going to help the investors de-risk the investment. So sometimes for an investor to come and set up, they are worried about the commercial viability of setting up here in Enugu. And at that point, we intervene as a state government, say, you know what, we'll give you an offtake guarantee. We will offtake this quantity from you, provided you're setting up here. And we'll also help you with the marketing, because we're going to show the entire country that we're using your brand and your brand is safe. So it's been a deliberate strategy. So you can see how we're now able to achieve 3 million visitors in Enugu every year. I also want to talk about, still on tourism, we are building about just a week ago, the Executive Council approved funds to build 4 major tourism sites. One at Opatu /Ohum. We have another one in Sude. We have the Ngo pine forest, where we're going to do a zip line. We're going to have both eco-tourism, religious tourism, and why not? Because Enugu, frankly, with our topography and our scenic landscape, lend itself naturally to those tourism. So we're just now creating an immersive tourism experience, by investing in those areas so that people will have something to look forward to coming to Enugu. And let me also try and talk a bit about what we have done, because I know you are going to have a lot of questions. But in the youth and sports sector, you already know we did a marathon, the Enugu International Marathon. So Enugu International Marathon is going to become a major highlight for the International Athletics Federation calendar. When you talk about the London Marathon, the Lagos Marathon, the Boston Marathon, you also have to talk about the Enugu Marathon. We had the maidens edition this year. I'm sure you all noticed that I participated. Thank goodness. We are going to upscale that. We're going to upgrade that. And what you're going to see next year, we're not only going to attract elite runners from Africa, we're also going to attract elite runners from across the globe. So we're also hosting the National Sports Festival next year. So very soon, actually from next month, from June, we're going to start the upgrade of the Nnamdi Azikiwe Stadium. We're going to bring it to a world class. We're also going to do the Ogu Games Village. We're going to fix the Ogu Games Village, and that would be the locations for the National Sports Festival coming up sometime in the middle of next year. And then we would obviously not be able to cover our intervention across the sectors in 40 minutes. And because I am mindful, just for context, we have currently, as a government, we're doing over 8,500 projects. So even if I start talking about them one after the other, we will not have 2 hours, won't be enough to cover that. But it is my hope that perhaps some of this will be brought up during the Q&A section. But let me just say this. This opportunity to render just a highlight of some of our modest achievement or our scorecard is not one I take for granted. And I want to again thank His Lordship, the Bishop, for granting us this opportunity. I see this as a collective work. I think that this is one thing that we share together. Our common denominator is the people, serving the people through your vocation, serving the people through governance. And so opportunities like this is for me like a mirror, and to interrogate, as I said, the validity of some of these programs and policies. So once again, I want to thank you for listening, and I invite you to please question me, ask questions on areas you may be a bit confused, that you need further clarifications, on things that you outrightly disagree with. This is a brotherly conversation. Thank you very much.
This is wonderful.
Look at what he talked about: maternal mortality being reduced, child mortality being reduced. This is all part of promoting life. But the governor told us that he was here as being accountable to the people. And his sentence is, government must be accountable to people. That's not normal language in many African nations. That the governor spends an entire Saturday trying to, and he says in a brotherly atmosphere. But let me go then therefore back to those principles which he has mentioned, not only the fear of God, the respect for life, but even the entire thing about solidarity. We have to do it together. We cannot do it alone. The other thing about taking care of education as part of promoting God's ideal for the human being, because only human beings have rationality. So what is being done in education? And there is an acknowledgement of what the Catholic Church has done in education. In his own words, Enugu and Catholic education go together. There is some element in these values about integrity, that what you say and what you do, and when we look at your lips and look at your action, we find holistic background, that we are not talking with lips and doing some other thing. And this is integrity. But I also had a word about focus, staying on the job, not just wishy-washy, one step forward, two steps backwards, but pushing on and having an agenda. I do think that some of these values are important. But he lifted one, inclusion. And in talking about inclusion, no one is left behind.
And I want to ask a question on the problem of sustainability of these efforts in the future. Is there any investments being done on human resource? Because the burden of sustainability in the future lies on a robust human resource that is ethical and a culture of accountability and integrity in the system. So are you investing on this?
Thank you very much.
I want to call your attention. You are trying to upgrade, but that the other way to correctional center, where we have a lot, almost 3,000 inmates. I don't really know if the state also have an intention of providing a rehabilitation center, because some people there do not need to be there.
Thank you very
when
much,
they
sister.
come there, they learn other things.
This has to do with the prisons and the situation. Thank you very much.
Assumption Sunday, after Mass, I took my Mass servers to the zoo in Enugu. My Mass servers, many of them are priests now. But now there's no more zoo in Enugu. I don't know if the government is aware of that, I hope. Then also, I used to patronize the market garden that existed every year, but now it's no longer there. The manner our people drive cars in town is terrible. When there's a little hold up over there, people can't queue up. You find cars rushing from the right, from the left and the right, and then the little space there is blocked, and people continue staying and up to 30 minutes. You can't even reverse the door to go back. So I'm wondering if whoever is in charge of transportation or whatever can do something so that I would like to see an improvement in the manner we drive in the city.
Thank you.
On the slums, I thank you that you are addressing that issue. I am in St. Mary Parish, I have one of the areas we have marked out for development, Abakpa. But my issue there is that you have said you are going to give them accommodation elsewhere. That accommodation obviously will address the landlords. Those who are tenants there, they be left hanging. In developed countries, they have what you call social housing, where people are provided accommodation at minimal rates, because not many people in this city can bring up 1 million to get accommodation of a 3-bedroom flat. So if there, for example, in Abakpa, you have a social housing where people will be accommodated and they can pay acceptable, rent, it will be a good thing. It's not to plot it out so that the rich take it over and those poor ones are not.
Thank you very much.
You have a housing area where the social housing, if you go to London, if you go to France, they have social houses that takes care of the poor.
Okay, because there is, like in Alpha, there is only one smart school, but there are many other traditional schools. The emphasis is on the smart schools. And I want to know whether he has a plan to smartify those traditional schools. Otherwise, you will be producing two different sets of children in the same community. That's my point.
For us, our competitive advantage in the smart school space is not necessarily the structure. Any government with money can build structure and do that very quickly once you have one. It is about the content and also those who would deliver the content and how the content will be delivered. And in my remark, I said something about experiential learning. We have not just created an institutional framework. We've actually built a center for experiential learning and innovation. That building is going to be ready sometime by next month. But the idea of a CELI, which is what we refer to it as CELI, Center for Experiential Learning and Innovation, is so that it becomes a pipeline for all the teachers to pass through. We're currently recruiting about 13,000 teachers. We also have done CBT exercise for the existing teachers. So we have a minimum threshold that a teacher must meet for us to recruit them for training. And it is through that first test. Once you cross that hurdle, we know that, oh, you're trainable. And then we can then begin aggressive training. So training is of utmost importance to us. And we have experts, not just in Nigeria, that we're working with to develop the programs we have for our educators. It is for us the be-all and the end-all. We must get it right, which is why if you look at our recruitment process, we've imbibed the highest value of transparency. You're not going to be recruited because you're from a particular local government or you're the governor's friend or governor's brother. In fact, in the Executive Council, we made it clear that nobody should reach out to the recruitment officers and to try to lobby for anybody to get recruited. We must recruit the best of our best and train them. And so that's, for us, we're also in agreement that whether the smart schools succeed or not is a function of how equipped are the teachers to continue to train this. So there is a huge, so if you look at all the digital gaps we have today, we're covering that in the training. So if we talk about mechatronics or artificial intelligence, for example, we may not have enough mechatronic teachers. We have a target for each smart school. Each smart school would have between 40 and 50 teachers, because we have a minimum number, we have a maximum cap of students that we can take. That's why there is a range. But for those, we also have a minimum number for each subject, minimum for the number of subjects, because the system is a bit different. We're not, I think the technical people will understand this better. The way, if you are to teach mathematics in our basic school, you're not going to teach mathematics because you're a teacher. You must be an expert in mathematics. So it's subject-based, even from that elementary school. You know, just the same thing you would have seen in a senior secondary school or so before now. So we're quite particular about that. In terms of the sustainability, so I think that once we, so if you look at also the upgrade we're doing in our technical education space, the current education, our College of Education
that we're upgrading to University of Education and Technology is also because of this training. We expect that they will provide curriculum that our teachers would also be able to benefit from. So ethics is quite heavy in our curriculum. So part of what we do is personal development, PD. And PD is quite heavy on civic values. You know, obviously, people don't get quite corrected when they go through the system. Because if it's going to live up to that word, correctional center, then there are other activities beyond just incarcerating people there that you must provide. So the new location we've identified is big enough, is off-site, and we're going to ensure that we have all those activities that will help with the rehabilitation of the inmates, and so they become truly corrected when they go through that system. Monsignor Kanife talked about the zoo and the market garden. We're hoping, as part of our intervention in the tourist sector, we're also hoping to do a zoo. We're almost concluding on the feasibility study. We have actually, in fact, reached out to some of the people in other countries, like, and I can mention that here, Namibia, where they believe that they can help us with some of the animals we've identified to have in our zoo here. So we're going to, again, as part of our tourism plan, create another zoo here in Enugu. So very soon, our children will have a zoo to go to in Enugu. We're thinking about doing an agro hub. So the market garden is no longer there, but we're going to build an agro hub. We're hoping to do an agro transformation hub as part of our agricultural sectoral intervention.